Hey everyone, welcome to an Ask GN. It's been a long time since I've said that. So in these videos, we do Q&A. Basically, we take some common questions. These days, we don't take direct questions in the same way, but we basically aggregate sort of the most common things we're seeing in our videos for a given period of time. We'll take some from Patreon Discord, and we put together a questions and answers segment that we call Ask GN. We've done over 100 episodes of it, but not many in the last year. So we're going to be talking about the GN case idea that came up a while ago. I've answered this in Reddit comments and a few other places, but not in a formal video. We'll be talking about fire hazard testing, something we're adding to our case testing suite. Also going over some of the best cases right now, why we don't review certain types of components, and a couple of other topics. Before that, this video is brought to you by ASUS and the ROG Crosshair 8 series of X570 motherboards for AMD. ASUS has both the Crosshair 8 Hero Dark and the Crosshair 8 Extreme available, offering high-end motherboards for high core count AMD systems. We've used the Crosshair series for years, for everything from basic overclocking up to liquid nitrogen overclocking, and we found them easy to work with, particularly for their extremely well-organized BIOS menus. Learn more at the link in the description below. So if you haven't seen an Ask GN in the past, they are unscripted. I have some notes in front of me to make sure I kind of get all the questions I want to get, but they're not scripted. That means it's going to be a lot more off the cuff, and we'll see what happens. We'll see how the content quality is. But normally it's pretty good because these give you a bit of a behind-the-scenes look at things without all of the heavy editing work we do to make sure the content conveys certain meaning. Instead, it's more of a let's just talk about what people are asking about. So the first one that comes up, GN case when? That'll be our starting topic for today. And I'll mention as well, we're going to have a bonus Ask GN episode on the Patreon page. So if you go to patreon.com/gamersnexus and you can join there, we will be posting an extra Patrons Ask GN that we take some questions from the Patreon Discord. All right, anyway, first question. So about the GN case. A while ago, we did a video where we sort of looked for community feedback, where we talked about actually a couple case manufacturers had approached us, but one in particular approached us and said, would you like to work together on making a case? And they said, basically, it'll be similar to the Lian Li in the 011 dynamic with Der Bauer collaboration, where strictly speaking from a design standpoint, back when the 011 dynamic first launched, and it's been a great case, did extremely well, we liked it. I spoke to Der Bauer before the review or at one of the trade shows or something. I asked them, what was your level of input? Are they basically just putting your name on this? Did they license it from you? This is all just us talking as peers, people who know each other pretty well. And the thing that I ended up taking away from it, and we shared, and he gave me permission to share this information because it's not special, was that he had about 80 to 90% of the input into the design. And so in other words, what I was trying to figure out at the time was how much of this is you versus how much of this is them. And the answer was most of it was Der Bauer. It was Roman. He did a lot of the design. He did a lot of the back and forth. He came up with the concepts. He came up with the features. And Lian Li made it and sold it. But he had a high level of input. And so if we ever made a case, I decided that would be what I would want, where we would have a high level of control we could exercise over it, because I don't want to put my name on something if the other company, even if it's responsible for making it, and having the factories, having the connections, having the logistics, all these things where it's maybe not possible without. But if I'm putting my name on something, I wanted to make sure we had control over the process, and at any point we could say, nope, we don't like it, take our name off of it, it's yours now, don't say anything about us. And that all looked like it would have been possible if we went down the road of working out the legal paperwork with a company at some point to put it together. But we decided not to. And in that original video where we were talking about it, one of the things that I spent a lot of time talking about was sort of the conflict or the ethics or whatever. It's all stuff we'd obviously spent a lot of time thinking about. And I'm still confident today that we could probably navigate that, but I ultimately, even though there was overwhelming support of us working with a case manufacturer to design and brand a case that they would also co-brand, we would work together on, even though there was a ton of support for that from you all, overwhelming majority said, yes, do it. Ultimately, I was like, I just don't really want to. I'd love to make a case, and I think it would be fun, but I just didn't really want to work with anyone in that capacity on it after thinking about it a lot. And part of that was navigating as we review things going forward, like if our case ends up really high on the charts, what do we do? Like, do we just not mention it? Do we take it off the charts because of a conflict? Do we mention it with a disclosure? Whatever. And there's ways to navigate that. And like I said, I'm confident we could have, but I'm at a point in the career with GN where if it's not something I'm 100% on board with, I just don't do it. And I like that. So if we do a case, what we're thinking these days, and we're not designing one right now to be clear, is if we do one, we'll probably go it our own, and we would work with a factory directly and hire things out as needed. There's a lot of things with a case that are really complicated compared to anything else we make. So we make some pretty complicated stuff. The mod mats are not particularly easy. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that makes them challenging. The toolkits aren't easy, but the thing with the case is it's very large, it's potentially very heavy, and logistically, you need that in distributors around the world if you're going to sell it globally. Shipping it from the US to, say, Germany for a customer to a B2C, a customer to business or business to customer order, it stops kind of making sense in a lot of ways because it's too big. And so the shipping gets too challenging to deal with, and you need that logistical connection with another partner, and that's what a case manufacturer would supply in some ways. We could work that all out. We could definitely establish partnerships with distributors. We know people at Case King and other retailers like that. It's possible. But it's just, ultimately, there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing right now and that everyone in the business is doing right now where we're all busy and we're all pretty happy with what we're doing. And I don't think that really adding this particular challenge would increase my happiness or anyone else's happiness. I don't think it would disproportionately increase that to where it would counterbalance the increase in stress or workload while we try to juggle all the other stuff we're doing, testing, reviews, building out the new space, adding lab equipment, learning how to use the lab equipment in the new space, like the fan tester. All of that stuff's more exciting to the team right now than I think doing the case. We're not saying no. And like I said, maybe I'll work with a company at some point. There's about 2 I trust right now where I would trust them to listen to me and to do what we want within reason. And obviously it would be some sort of partnership. They'd be providing input too, but there's only really 2 companies I'd trust to say, yes, you can put our name on that product. And that's not a very big list. So we're just not right now. Anyway, something like that, it'd be very educational. That's why we liked it. It would teach us all about the behind the scenes. We can make all kinds of videos along the way of here's the design phase, here's where you strip out features for reasons X, Y, Z, here's why those reasons are reasons that you strip features out for. It teaches a lot. It would improve our quality as reviewers, but just the level of, I think it comes down to this. We've never really favored a financial decision over a I don't want to do it decision. So, and I'm sticking to that where, I was walking through our new location the other day and it's really coming together well. We just did a post on it on Patreon. We'll do one publicly soon. But I was walking through the space and looking around, I was like, we built all of this without favoring a financial decision. If I didn't want to do something, I didn't do the thing. And we still managed to get that space. And we're all really happy with it. We've built it out, to everyone's sort of needs and wants as an employee, as a team member, as a contributor, whatever, as an owner on my end. So it's just kind of like the case, it'd be cool from a learning standpoint, from a video standpoint. It would make good money if it's a good case. So there's that aspect too. But when I was looking at it, it felt like the most valuable aspect out of all of that sometimes was the financial side, and that's just not that exciting where it's not what we focus on. We'd have a lot more things if we focused on the financial side. I personally, this is important maybe for you to understand as someone who watches our reviews, to understand my perspective when I'm reviewing something. Personally speaking, I very highly value my time, even if my time is not valuable. Does that make sense? Like, even when I was making nothing, I valued my time pretty high. And I value what I want to do pretty high over what I might feel like I should do for some reason or another. And so when it comes to something like making a product or making a business decision, the money doesn't weigh that heavily if I'm not like in dire straits, and we've never been there. So it's just that aspect. I don't weigh it too much. I weigh do I want to do this? Do I have time to do this? Is there other stuff I would rather do instead? Not just opportunity cost from a business angle, but opportunity cost from the mental angle. Like, are you happy with what you're doing? So that's what I try to focus it on, and that's not why we're not doing a case right now. But hopefully that gives you the answer on that one. Too much stress basically to try and trust a company to work with them right now. But maybe in the future, or maybe we'll just hire it out on our own if we end up in a position where we can do that. Next one is fire hazard testing. This came up in the Patreon Discord over on patreon.com/gamersnexus, where one of our members there asked if after the recent issues with the Fractal Torrent and the NZXT-H1, was there another one? I think there was another one. Maybe not. After those two cases, though, with the fire issues being both stemming from a PCB that had a 12-volt plane way too close to the surface and getting shorted, the question was, will you guys start basically testing these devices like fan hubs or PCIe risers for a potential fire hazard? And the answer is sort of yes. And the reason there's a sort of there is because this is something I don't think we're fully tooled up to do in like a really wide or deep scope for fire hazard testing. That's pretty complex. But it's something I'd like to work towards as a validation lab as we have more space for new equipment. And what we can do is we can at least test for this mistake, the one that has now been made twice in the same year and last year, that very easily causes a fire. So I was talking to Patrick about this, where he is going to start looking at the fan hub PCBs more carefully. Historically, we never really thought about those. It's just like, it's a fan hub. We would talk about if it's useful or if it's positioned well or how cheap it looks, but we wouldn't really think about the safety aspect because it's a level of, you're naive until something like the NZXT-H1 happens, where you just sort of think like, well, there's all these stamps on it. Those mean something, right? They should know more than us. So we're going to defer to all of these organizations and this alphabet soup of letters all over this board. We're going to trust that this thing at some point by one of these was tested for safety. And what we've learned after digging through all the certificates and all the validation processes is that there's really not a really thorough safety check for electronic devices, at least of this nature. And I'm not saying we're going to provide that, certainly not anytime in the immediate future, because there's a reason it's not provided. It's hard. And a lot of it does depend on unit-to-unit variance, not with manufacturing, but with stuff as far down the line as assembly, where with Fractal, they'd put the PCB in there, run a screw, and it chips the surface a little bit. And when it chips that black coating off the surface, now you have the short. So that wouldn't even be seen in a test lab. That would be seen after the fact. How do you account for that is the question. And the answer is, well, you can, but it's not easy. So we're not, just to be really clear with everyone, we're not going to do like some really in-depth, here's like the fire hazard lab result from GN or something. It'd be cool. Maybe in the future we'll add something like that. But what we will do is, as cases come through now, we're going to do stuff like a scratch test where we look for, is there a 12-volt plane on the surface that could easily be exposed to a screw when it's being installed in a case at assembly, or does it seem like it's built properly? And we're going to look at things like the through holes. They don't always need to be a plated through hole, a PTH, but plated through holes do certainly help prevent issues like this. And so we'll look for things like that. We'll talk about the quality of the PCB to some extent. If it's not super exciting and we didn't find any major issues, we might still sort of relegate the mentioning of that fan hub or whatever it is in the case to just mentioning its base qualities. But if we see that as particularly high quality from an assembly manufacturing standpoint, or particularly low quality, or if we're able to create a short with the same thing that created a short in the Fractal one that they've fixed, to be very clear, and the NZXT-H1 one that they fixed and then changed, and maybe it's fixed, but NZXT was really, like, we had to pull all of their teeth out for that one, so I'm not really sure I trust the end result. But we're going to start looking for that in case reviews now. This is just something we never really, you don't think of it until you see something like that. So I'm excited about it because it's something new we can do. And I think it's really opened our eyes, my whole team, editors included, where they're not doing the review proper, they're editing it. But it's opened everyone's eyes where we've talked now about like, it's kind of scary. There's so much stuff you plug into the wall every day. And you're just like, yeah, this seems good. I bought it from Amazon, $8, pretty good. Plug it in, you leave, you come back, and you hope your house hasn't burned down. It's not even that. You don't even hope your house hasn't burned down because you don't think about it being a possibility with most of this stuff. And then you get a $180 case in or whatever the H1 cost and realize that this thing could burn a house down. And those manufacturers have worked to resolve those issues, but they shouldn't happen to begin with. Even with Fractal's extremely good response, obviously it shouldn't have happened. It's sort of a rookie mistake, and yeah, so we're going to start looking for that stuff. Quick thing too, we've actually started doing some grounding tests with cases now, where we haven't really been talking about the results too much. We included it in one of the reviews, I think it was a Corsair one of some kind, but we had a basic grounding test of, you know, there should be a connection to ground, ideally at the power supply screws, for example, and we've been checking for stuff like that just with simple resistance and continuity checks. Part of it is seeing, for example, if there's maybe too much paint in an area where there should be a good ground contact. This is for both anti-static reasons and other reasons, but we talked about that in our anti-static mat video where we explained the science behind the mod mats, and we'll link that in the description below if you're curious. But we've added that to case reviews also. All right, speaking of cases, let's talk a little bit about best cases right now. We've seen some of this recently as it's approaching buying season, I suppose. So we're gonna do a full roundup as usual. We have a best cases of 2021 so far video from a while ago, but we're working on an update. We'll push that out closer to probably later November, give a little bit more time for some more cases to launch, and we'll put out a best cases for 2021 video at that point. But we can talk about some of the quick highlights if you're in the market for a case right now. So we did like the Torrent. The response to the issues was really encouraging. Those issues, it was the fan hub one, shouldn't have happened, but in the current market, not even scratch that, in the market, not the current market, in the world in general, a manufacturer identifying an issue, putting a stop sale order in place, pulling it back and fixing it with a high level of like over fixing it. Like they did way more than they needed to. That's so rare right now that there's a lot of value there. So we did like the Torrent for that response, but we liked it anyway before that. Got a really high review from us before the fire issue was even found and then fixed. And the reasons we like that were it's unique, it has really neat airflow patterns that are pretty cool. It's got 180mm fans. Those are interesting and different. Really good for airflow, and so we liked that. But it's expensive, and so there are other cases too. On the smaller side, we like the Cooler Master NR200P. We never did a formal review of it. We are working on the O11 Air Mini right now, but we delayed that because they have a new panel revision that was not ready in time for the original reviews, so we put that all on hold, and we have one coming up with both of the panels, both of the airflow panels on it. And we'll let you know how we like that one. But then on the larger side, the Corsair 4000D is actually a really good airflow focused case. Get the airflow one, not the solid panel one. But for under $90 on average, it's a good position, and it's a true return to form for Corsair, where for years, Corsair's case offerings they were boring or bad, like really bad. And this was an excellent return to form with the 4000D. The 5000D series is pretty good too, but it's more expensive. And the 7000D just it's a lot of Ds. It's 3,000 more Ds than the 4000D, and therefore, anyway, it probably means something. But no, the 4000D is good. So that one's good for budget. The Fractal Meshify 2 series has been overall pretty good. We liked the compact specifically from that series. That's close to the 100-ish mark, plus or minus 20. And the O11 Dynamic is still a great water cooling case too, or all-arounder. I think it was the Silent Base 802 we looked at where it had the swappable airflow or solid panel. That one got good reviews and testing from our side of things too. So there's a lot of really good cases out there right now. And what we're gonna do, as we always do, multiple times per year normally, is put together a best of roundup and go through all the highlights and lowlights of each one and hopefully help you figure out what's right for your build. But that gives you kind of my personal quick list of here's the ones that are in my mind right now that I've looked at recently. I've worked with recently in the lab here, and what I might personally consider buying if I were buying something right now. That gives you a good range of prices too to work in. Up next, let's talk about why don't you review blank, whatever it is. We get this a lot from monitors. People really ask us about what monitors do we like, what do we think about monitor XYZ. It's probably actually pretty close to a monitor name at this point. They're not good. And if we can help with monitor issues, I always feel bad to say, no, sorry, I don't know. I don't know if that monitor is good. I haven't heard of that monitor. I don't pay attention to monitors. And no one on our team does. It's not something that we do right now. So I did want to use this, though, to talk about why don't we review certain types of components. We generally try to focus on things that we're really good at. So I feel like our content type has good variety these days. And we've grown to get good at a lot of things. So for Patrick, for example, Patrick Lathan, he's an expert in cases for sure. He's very good at knowing how to run just benchmarks in general as a concept. That's something that we've learned over the years. A lot of people just don't have that, but he started with me very early and we both figured it out together. So he's gotten good at that. So cases, he's good at benchmarking in general, thinking through processes in general, which is good because that applies to a wide range of things. If we wanted to review monitors, I could work with someone with that skill set and we could both troubleshoot it together. What would someone want to learn about this product so we can review it? And he's good at things like working with, well, specifically research intensive topics. Like when we did the Jiaoxin CPU from a while ago, he did all the heavy research for that and it came out great. So that's stuff he's very specialized in and good at. Patrick Stone is learning a lot about power supplies. He's becoming a specialist in power supplies. He knows the most on our team out of it, and he's working to know more for reviews. He's just recently added transient load testing, for example. He added some other kind of testing he was excited about that we'll be talking about soon. So he's good at those things. He's good at educating in general. That's his background. And on my side, I probably have the widest range of things I'm pretty good at because I've been doing this the longest. And I had to put all the processes in place originally. But I would say the things that I'm the most specialized in would be thermal. So anything to do with thermal, coolers for GPUs, CPUs, with test engineering. So designing test cases for basically any product that's a computer part I can do. And then some sort of odd ones like overclocking, liquid nitrogen overclocking. I've gotten decent at, not competitive level, but you know, I mean, it's liquid nitrogen, so better than most people. Good enough to kind of give an informed opinion on some things. And GPU and CPU reviews. So those are the things that we're good at. The next thing we're adding is going to be fans. Fans are sort of related to coolers. They at least are part of the cooler review process. So we'll be able to expand our cooler review scope to now look at the fan quality, not just the thermal performance, but how good is the thing that it ships with to do the cooling performance. And that's cool because it's kind of related to stuff that we're already good at, but I have to learn a lot about flow and pressure and physics, and it's going to be a long journey to learn about fans, and that's going to take months to get the process in place to where we feel okay about it. We're kind of like the liquid nitrogen stuff where I'll be able to say, I'm not the expert in this thing, fans in this case, but I'm good enough to tell you if this thing's any good, and we're going to get better at it as we go. It's going to take years to become experts in something like that. So that's what we're adding next. That means we don't have a lot of capacity because we try to focus like that to add just monitors or add keyboards, for example. That's like keyboards is this whole level of depth that to be an expert in it, someone on my team would have to focus on it exclusively for a long time. And I respect the hell out of the people who know a lot about keyboards, but you got to pick and choose the things you want to be good at in life in general. And so we add stuff pretty slowly because we want to really get good at that thing. Now, all of that said, sometimes we'd like to do something different. So we'll do a one-off where we just like cleaning the GPU. I did that a while ago. It's rooted in something we're good at, which is taking apart and working with GPU video cards. But it was different because it's like a cleaning video. Sometimes you creatively want to do something different. Or I might want to enable my editors to work on something different that's not all 1,000 charts. And that's where you get stuff like the factory tours. And we can get good at a lot of those things, and we are pretty good at some of them, like the factory tours, especially now, I think. But I guess I'm just bringing this up because you'll see us do something different every now and then. And even if it's not a core focus of ours, just know that we did work very hard to get the quality of that content or the testing or whatever it is as high as we reasonably could for like a one-off or an initial piece. And then as we do more of them, we'll get better at it. So kind of this topic reminds me of what bands must deal with when a band puts out a new album and you get the usual like, oh, I like their older stuff better or whatever, or they should stick to this genre, or they should stick to this aspect of this subgenre. And as I've done more of this on YouTube, now I really understand how the bands must feel when they read those comments, where if they even read them at this point, where they're probably like, you know, I wanted to do something different, and you people are the reason we can't have anything nice. But what I respect is when in this example, the musicians will still try something different and keep trying something different and sort of diversify or increase the variety of the music they offer. And so we try to do that with videos to some extent. We stay pretty close to our core genre, so to speak, but we do add over time. Now for monitor reviews specifically though, I am happy to point you all towards Hardware Unboxed for that. They do a good job of it, and it's just not a component we review right now. I think they'd probably point you to us for cases, so I'm happy to point you to them for monitor reviews and getting some depth there. All right, so that's it for this one. It's fun to do some Ask GNs every now and then. I like it because it's less scripted. It's more of just like, here's a different look at what we do and our thought process, and gives people a better idea for the background of the reviewers that they watch. In this case, it's me and Patrick Stone, that is, and Mike doing the cooler testing these days, doing all the sort of technician aspect of it. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of what we're trying to do for some of those questions. Hopefully it helps out with the case questions as well. Check back for more as always. You can subscribe, or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus if you'd like to get access to the Patrons Ask GN episode that we're publishing for Patreon backers specifically. Thank you all for your support. That is what's making it possible for us to build out the testing lab we're building out right now. And we'll see you all next time.